Welcome, Arlingtonians. Thank you for inviting me to this forum. I'm Audrey Clement, independent candidate for Arlington County Board. As an 18-year Westover resident, longtime civic activist, current member of the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, and past member of the Transportation Commission, I'm running for county board because it has pushed harmful policies resulting in overcrowded schools, gentrification, loss of green space, and excessive taxation. Now the county is pushing missing middle, multifamily dwellings in single-family home neighborhoods. Contrary to what the county says, missing middle will not make housing more affordable. Instead, it will inflate land values, resulting in higher housing prices, overcrowded schools, more traffic congestion, loss of tree canopy, increased runoff, and more air pollution. The county's own data indicates that an income of over $100,000 a year will be needed to afford a low-end one-bedroom condo. In 2019, the county reported Black and Latino median household income at just a fraction of that. Furthermore, the county projects that 90% of new units built will be 1 to 2 bedrooms, already in good supply, not the 3-bedroom units that are actually needed. 80% will likely be rentals, not owner-occupied. Let's face it, the only beneficiaries of missing middle are the developers who are already making a killing by flipping properties in your neighborhood. Another issue that concerns me is tax gouging. The board recently adopted a $1.5 billion budget that includes a 5.3% effective real estate tax rate increase. Nothing new here. In fact, between 2012 and 2021, Arlington's 10-year average annual effective real estate tax rate increase was double the rate of inflation. Are these over-the-top annual tax rate increases actually needed to fund the budget? Neighboring jurisdictions have lowered real estate tax rates in the wake of rising assessments. In fact, Fairfax County recently reduced its real estate tax rate by 3 cents per $100 of assessed value. If elected, I pledge to seek immediate tax relief for residents and businesses. Say yes to affordable housing and no to missing middle upzoning. Preserve Arlington's cultural heritage. Stop permitting the destruction of historic structures like the Rouse Estate that was demolished in March of 2021. I will save our parks, streams, and tree canopy. Stop clear-cutting wooded areas along Potomac River tributaries in the name of stream resilience. Thank you.
Same order. I'll stand as well so everyone in the audience and online can see easier. I'm Adam Theo, independent, running for Arlington County Board. My problems with the incumbent, with Matt, are the same problems I have with the entire county board. They talk big as progressives, but then they often stumble, fumble, and then just come in and throw money around to try to solve a problem. They often end up just doing the bare minimum. Matt and the rest of the county board are reactive. They deal with problems after they've become crises, and they just come in, check boxes, and then pat themselves on the back. We need a county budget that prioritizes public safety with safer roads, flooding, and property thefts. End the housing crisis with an all-of-the-above solution, tackling property tax rates, missing middle housing, and doubling our committed affordable housing fund. Bring true accountability and reform to our county governance by fully funding the county auditor's office, something that is long overdue. Implementing ranked choice voting, big fan of that, and making sure that every voter has a voice and no resident is left out of big decisions. As Vice President of the Ballston Virginia Square Civic Association, a voting delegate to the Civic Federation, and co-founder of YIMBYs of Northern Virginia, a grassroots housing advocacy group, my heart and soul are in Arlington County's continued prosperity. I'm a straight-to-the-point, no-nonsense, policy wonk kind of guy. I'm a veteran of the Air Force Reserves as a civil engineer with a deployment to Afghanistan. I've lived on both sides of law enforcement, as a consultant for police and other first responders across the country for almost a decade, but also incarcerated in my younger years. Before moving to Arlington 10 years ago, I'd been homeless twice, most recently during DC's Snowmageddon winter of 13 years ago. It's these experiences, unlike any other county board member, that have made me into the strong-willed, free-thinking advocate that I am today. I'm Adam Theo, independent for Arlington County Board. Find the campaign at theoforarlington.org, and I look forward to supporting you and making sure that this county continues to prosper and grow. Thank you.
Good evening, fellow Arlingtonians. Thank you to both civic associations for organizing this debate and to each of you for coming to hear us out. There are a few who might not know me. I am a new husband. I love serving this community. This is one of my favorite jobs I can imagine. My career includes experience as a teacher, lawyer, and advocate for educational and economic opportunity. 4 years ago, I knocked on your doors and visited with many of you about your priorities. You shared your ideas and conversations that revealed to me the pride that I know both civic associations have in how informed and how civically engaged you are. I've worked my heart out to serve you. Last year I served as chair in the middle of COVID, successfully advocating for additional vaccines and helping Arlington to one of the highest vaccination rates in Virginia, and indeed in the country. My leadership was tested 3 days into my time as chair when I had to order a curfew due to the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. On affordable housing, I have led. We preserved 1,300 units at the Barcroft Apartments that otherwise were going to go to the private sector and be market rate and unaffordable for working Arlingtonians. On the economy, I passed groundbreaking collective bargaining and prevailing wage ordinances. On education, I increased funding for our schools to raise teacher salaries this past year and to meet the big capacity challenges we faced 3 and 4 years ago. Those challenges we should talk more about. I've been a champion on our climate, putting us on track to hit our 2025 and now 2035 goals. On equity and racial justice, I led in the creation of a mental health docket, police oversight board, new county logo, and in the renaming of Langston Boulevard. On hunger, I started a food security task force, and we're working on that key issue. My work has earned the support of the Sierra Club and the Northern Virginia Labor Federation, as well as every other elected leader in Arlington, including your neighbors, Jay Fassett and Patrick Hope, a little further out. I'm proud of what I've done. I'm determined to serve you and deliver for you if you give me the chance, the opportunity to serve you. Those 5 are my key priorities: inclusive economic growth, sufficient supply of affordable housing, step up to climate, because there are new facts that are deeply troubling, partner with APS on equity and excellence. I love our community, I'm honored to serve, and I hope that I can earn your support and your vote in this election.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll jump right to the questions. The first one, it may not surprise you to hear, is a question on missing middle. When missing middle was first put forward by our neighbor, Eric Gutschall, he was describing it as enabling middle-income people to buy in Arlington County. The county has now indicated it can't determine how many housing units created will be rental and which would be condo or homeownership units. More recent analysis has suggested that these units would be difficult or impossible for families in the lower 2/3 of Arlington's income distribution to attain. Several proponents were hoping the missing middle would be a way to better integrate neighborhoods and reduce the segregation in our public schools. Define the missing middle proposal for the audience as you understand it, and the reasons why you support it or do not. I'm going to start this time with Mr. Ferranti.
Thank you. So I would imagine that several of you are here tonight because you are very concerned about missing middle. I want to tell you my views and why I think a thoughtful and tailored approach can help your kids or your grandkids have a better chance to own in Arlington. The phrase missing middle, I think, is intentionally, unfortunately, ambiguous. It can either you could either take from it that it means missing middle income, or you could take from it that it means missing middle housing types. The county has proceeded, and my purpose for supporting thoughtful, tiered missing middle housing policy is that I believe what we need to do is increase the frequency and availability of 2 and 3 bedroom units so that young families can stay here and buy a home and work their way up the economic ladder, and seniors can age in place when they are, all of us want to stay in our own homes. Seniors can age in place and come down to a smaller set. I don't support 8plexes. I do think that tiering in your neighborhoods means duplexes and 3plexes on the size of your lots. We can build enormous homes that are single-family homes. In that same size home or smaller, I believe we need additional supply to make it possible for the children who are in APS or your grandchildren to have a chance to live here like duplexes.
It's good that we're jumping right into the controversial questions for the candidates forum, isn't it? Get things out of the way. I actually prefer this instead of the rote scripted kind of introductions that every candidate is forced to go through as well. Missing middle housing, at its very simplest, its most fundamental, is about opportunities and options. Right now, we have a choice ahead of us, whether to try to hold on and preserve something that we cherish and love. And that's natural. It's not a bad thing to want to hold on to something that you grew up with and that you look around you and love. But we also have to look for the future and for our children and grandchildren. We also have to learn lessons from other cities and counties across the United States that are going through the exact same problems. In fact, they've gone through them decades before us, so that gives us plenty of opportunities to see what works and doesn't work. My fear with not passing missing middle and allowing to just stay the status quo is that we turn into another San Francisco or Seattle or San Jose. We've seen firsthand what happens to cities and counties that go that route that Audrey Clement, for example, wants of no missing middle housing, no more development. On the other side, we've seen what happens when you have reckless abandon of development. That's Houston, Atlanta, congestion, loss of trees, stormwater issues. Arlington County can be different. Arlington County has the talent, the resources, the wealth, the power, the influence to do things right. And I do strongly support the missing middle proposal as it's coming out. I think it'll do great things for Arlington County for everyone. Us, children, grandchildren, parents, grandparents, and new people who are moving into Arlington, into America for the very first time. Let's open our doors, open our land, and open up those opportunities and options for everyone. Thank you.
The definition of the term missing middle has proven to be a moving target. It started out as a way to redress racial inequities resulting from decades of redlining until it was established that the vast majority of people of color will be unable to afford even a low-end condo. Missing middle was then redefined as a way to provide more diverse housing types to people who could afford it until it was pointed out that 1/3 of the residential housing in the county already consists of missing middle housing types. Now the definition has been narrowed down to provide more diverse housing in each particular residential neighborhood to accommodate, perhaps, retirees who want to cash out their homes but remain in the county. Maintaining the same quality of life under this scenario is doubtful, given the likely impacts of densification on the neighborhoods. I also want to emphasize that I am the only candidate in the race who does not support upzoning, precisely because it will not provide more affordable housing options for the vast majority of people, either low-income renters or middle-income buyers. The county's own data indicate that a household income of over $100,000 a year will be needed to purchase or rent the cheapest new unit. a one-bedroom condo in an 8-plex. An income of $124,000, which is slightly less than median household income, will be needed to get a 2-bedroom condo in a 4-plex. This means that half the households in the county with 1 or more children will not be able to afford any missing middle housing whatsoever. The only beneficiaries of missing middle are the investors who flip the properties, the developers who mine them, and the county which reaps a real estate tax bonanza from them.
Okay. Paul, if you're here and hearing a sound problem that we could fix, please feel free to come to the front. Okay, in the meantime, much has been said about the Arlington Way, which used to be a point of pride with many and is now sometimes spoken of with derision. People have indicated, through the missing middle conversations especially, that the county board has created a kind of echo chamber in the people they appoint to commissions and are unwilling to hear opposing points of view, or at least views that don't already agree with staff proposals. Do you believe that the Arlington residents have a voice in their government? Do you think that Arlington residents should have a say in all the proposals being considered? How do you balance the input of current residents against your role as a county board member to anticipate the needs and interests of Arlington residents 20, 30, or even 50 years from now? We'll start with Mr. Theo.
This question is probably the most interesting question that will be hit on tonight. At least I think so, because I'm not a fool, I'm not naive. I expect that probably most of the people here in this audience are against or skeptical, critical of missing middle housing, right? It's a fair assessment. What you're really angry about, though, is not missing middle housing. You're angry and confused and frustrated that you don't have a voice on Arlington County Board that represents you. That is the challenge here. That is the problem. Because if you really had a voice, if your vote mattered and counted here in Arlington County, then the entire board, this entire process, would have been more carefully thought out, planned, and rolled out, advertised, educated, marketed, informed to the citizens. That right there is the challenge. And how we fix that, how we make sure that everyone, YIMBYs such as myself, people who are completely opposed to development such as Audrey, everyone has their vote counted and input into the county board process. That is the challenge. Solution, ranked choice voting. I'm a big fan of what the Civic Federation is doing with their TIGER team. It's a clever acronym. I think it stands for Task Force in Governance and Election Reform. It is a great group of people who are well respected here in Arlington County that came together to figure out how we tackle that exact problem. The TIGER team recommends ranked choice voting among many other things. Now, in the congressional debate just before us, I heard that ranked choice voting came up. I will put it on the record that I am a huge fan of it. It makes sure, it guarantees that every candidate, every politician gets 50% at least of support from the entire voting populace, not just a primary process where you can get in by just catering to a few select few, but literally everyone matters.
Well, first I want to let you know that I served on the Transportation Commission for 3 years. I actually got my appointment through Mr. John Weisstadt, who was run out in 2018, and Eric Gutschall, who was kind enough to support Weisstadt's promotion of me as a candidate for that commission. Unfortunately, I was the odd man out for 3 years. I routinely questioned the traffic impact analysis produced by the county's consultant, as well as recommendations by the staff. And I found out after the end of 3 years that that particular perspective was not welcome. The only perspective that is guaranteed to promote the longevity of a commission member in this county is to serve as a rubber stamp of the staff and the board. Now, I think it's a shame that it took the missing middle debate for county residents to realize that county board is neither responsive nor representative. County Board represents one interest and one interest only, the developers. It is unresponsive to anyone who is not on board with the developers. Why should it be? When voters deliver lopsided majorities to re-elect an all-Democrat county board year after year, where's the need to represent anyone else? The board sticks with the real estate interests who up until now have delivered a lot of revenue to county coffers. Now that the office market is in jeopardy, County Board has been told by them to upzone the county to maintain its tax base. And that's exactly what it's going to do unless you, the voters, say no and vote them out.
I think this is a very important question, and I do not think that we have done enough engagement on missing middle yet. I can tell you that my position on missing middle has already been impacted by engaging with neighbors across the community. First, I thought more and more about what eightplexes are going to be. I was worried about developer speculation and the likelihood that those units will be one bedroom, one bath, which will likely be rental. My interest is in ownership possibilities for your kids and grandkids and my kids. So I think that it is important to acknowledge that many of you feel, and I think it's reasonable concern, that your voice hasn't been heard yet in the missing middle discussion. I will say it's interesting, I get people who are unabashedly for missing middle and unabashedly against missing middle. The details of policies matter. And so that is a process that is ongoing, and I think we need to keep working with that. You have a say, and it's been shown, at least with my views, and I ask you to judge me on my own merits, distinct from all county board members, but judge me on my own merits. I'm listening. If you want to talk via phone or meet, I will meet with you. If you want to meet as a group with concerns about missing middle, I'll listen to you, and I won't just listen and not hear. I might not agree with everything you say, but I will deeply consider what you mention. The Arlington Way is excellent. We also must acknowledge that historically it has not been sufficiently diverse. We are in a competing set of moments. We can't subsidize home ownership because our median income is $124,000 for a household of 3. We can't annex a particular part of the county that is nearest metro and make that all townhomes. That would not be good for Ballston or these two communities. We have to listen and engage and find a tailored policy that works.
Thank you. Who has a question for county? Okay, we have several now. Okay. I'm going to, let's see, hate to do this, but I saw, John, your hand up first, and Bill Anhut's hand up second. So we'll see if we can take these two. Let me ask one question. Dave, do we have our school board candidates with us? And can I do a time check? Oh, okay. All right, we're going to take a few questions then. John, would you like to come up here, please?
Mr. Theo, I appreciate your passion about the missing middle topic, but one thing that really concerns me as a policy wonk is last week I engaged with your co-founder of YIMBY and asked if... Sorry. It is on. All right. So, last week I engaged with your co-founder of YIMBY and asked if he could please provide any... Is that better? Okay, I'll pretend it's better. If he could provide any evidence of communities elsewhere in the country that have implemented policies as those suggested by the county and whether or not they're successful. His response was, there's all sorts of data out there. I warmly encourage you to do your own research. If the advocacy organization is unable to provide data to a citizen who's interested in evidence that a policy is going to work, it either indicates that it doesn't work or there's no data. If there's no data, the answer to this is to have some sort of pilot program to explore the options that you, sir, have suggested and figure out what's going to work and not make it a permanent change that might screw the neighborhood up. Thank you.
So, John, the question was, what exactly?
Sure. John, thank you very much. For one, I'm happy to meet up and sit down with you and go over everything I know and why I advocate for it. So please reach out to the campaign through email or text message. I think I have some campaign cards. You can grab the info from there. So I will be happy to sit down with you and meet and talk in depth, however long you want. For here, purposes of trying to fit everything into a 30-second soundbite, I'll do my best. So we have evidence of what has worked as far as increasing housing supply in Minneapolis and Atlanta and Houston. Not exactly to what Arlington County is wanting to do. Arlington County is doing something different, a little bit bolder, but also in line with best practices used elsewhere. Also, we have evidence of what doesn't work, and that right there is the key factor of what drives missing middle forward and why we need it so desperately. We've looked at San Francisco for decades. We've looked at San Jose. We've looked at Seattle. All of those communities are what happens when you don't allow for increased housing supply, especially for that missing middle of townhouses, row houses, duplexes, garden-style apartments and condos. Those are the things that can have the most impact for housing supply, and we see the evidence of what happens when we stick with the status quo. It's horrible. We do not want to San Franciscoize Arlington. We do not want to have the same homeless crisis that we see in Seattle and San Jose. Let's make sure that we do things right, and the right way is with missing middle.
I'm going to pass it to Mr. J. Ferranti, but I would like to not only answer the question, but embedded in the question was a question about pilots. And if you could tell us, why did the county board and county staff not propose pilot projects?
All right, so I'll try and, so first on the evidence, this is Arlington, so half the people in the room have probably read the consultant study, the PES study. I've certainly discovered that in my conversations on missing middle, but it is an analysis that I neither take as the word of God, nor do I take it as completely ill-founded. I think that there are some pieces in here that indicate greater affordability than the status quo. The status quo is that in Arlington, we lose about 150 to 170 homes a year that are very small, that are replaced by very large homes. And what we're saying is allow, in those cases, in the same building envelope, no taller and no wider and no deeper, in that same building envelope, allow duplexes for the smallest lots, triplexes for more. I'll be transparent and say, I believe in fourplexes, and I haven't yet decided on 6. I think that would only apply to the very largest lots, and I am concerned about developer speculation. So that's some of the evidence here. There's also slide 20 from the April 28th draft that talks a little bit about it. But a little bit is also about the presumption. This will not solve our housing problems. I think what it can do is help our ladder work so that the economic ladder that so many federal employees in this room and my parents, they bought and their homes got worth more and more money. And they bought maybe in Colonial Village first, then came to Ashton Heights or Lyon Park. But they worked their way up the economic ladder. If we do nothing, I think you're going to need, in 15 years, you're going to need more like $400,000 a year in income in order to buy a home in Arlington. And that is what's been happening in the past 15 years, in my opinion. So I think the presumption is the second thing in addition. I don't know that I got to you.
If you don't mind, I can actually...
Thank you. Actually, it's Ms. Clement's turn. Ms. Clement, if you would also address the pilot question, and if that's something you might support, because we know you don't support missing middle.
Well, yes, definitely I would support a pilot program in an appropriately chosen neighborhood, perhaps along Langston Boulevard, to explore what happens when you gentrify a particular neighborhood. Now, there actually is a lot of evidence. First, so anyone who says that they need to do research or that the evidence is not readily available, is clearly not themselves up on the issue, because there is lots of evidence in journals, in regular periodicals. For example, there was a study done in the city of Austin, Texas, in a gentrified neighborhood, and one gentleman explained very simply that if you divide the income derived from one of these fourplexes, one of these, or eightplexes, one of these rental properties put into a residential neighborhood, if you divide the income by something called the market factors, the market rate factorization number for that particular area, you will get the actual assessed value of the property, and from that you can compute the real estate tax assessment increase that all the people in the neighborhood will experience. And in Austin, it was 18%. That is, real estate taxes went up 18%. That's because land values automatically inflate once the properties begin to flip. Now, that fact is clearly evident in the county's own data. It's saying that these rental units, these condo units, are going to be unaffordable to the people for whom they were designed.
Oh, okay. Oh, no, that's fine.
Hi, I'm Bill Anhut. I'm the treasurer of Lyon Park, and this is a very local question for all of you, primarily for Matt, but Lyon Park is privately owned by the community, and the community center is operated to pay for the maintenance of the park. We have lots of, we do not discriminate. We have a lot of Arlingtonians come and use our park, and we allow voting here in the building. And we've just been notified that we are a commercial enterprise that will no longer get trash service, and we won't get our leaves picked up anymore. Now, we appealed this, and we were told that it's the way it is in Arlington, and that we have to pay a couple of $1,000s more for our trash removal. It just doesn't seem right. So.
Thank you, Bill. Let's see. We'll let you take that question.
Sure. So if I tell you, I can wipe that away without knowing any additional facts, that would not be the right answer. But I am happy to look into it. I do think, I was here on Monday. I've sat here listening to Eric before he passed a number of times. I know what an extraordinary resource this is, and I've had conversations about the upkeep of the park that is done through the building. So I'm happy to look into it. I do also want to acknowledge that there's an element of accountability that is implicit in the question. And so I'm happy to follow up, but I don't know any background. I hadn't heard of this before. I certainly wouldn't be inclined to support it without knowing additional facts, but I can't tell you categorically until I know more what's going on, and that I would automatically say not a dime more. I have to look into it. So.
Did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Okay. Yeah. So I know that was primarily directed at Matt, but I can say that I would also love to learn more about this situation. Lyon Park right here is one of the things that first attracted me into Arlington. I don't live exactly nearby, unfortunately, but when I was first learning and exploring the area, I came across this place and fell in love. Arlington County needs to broaden its mindset of what constitutes a public space. Right now, Arlington's in this mindset of just treating publicly owned, county-owned properties and facilities as worthy of tax breaks and benefits and development at taxpayer expense. We need to make sure that places such as this that are privately owned but held by the community are included in that concept that receive those community services, those public services. So I would be very much in favor of looking at that and twisting some arms to undo that absurd, attempt at getting a few extra $1,000.
Well, I certainly agree with Adam again on that important point. I would say this is a litigious matter. That is, this thing should go to circuit court. I mean, this thing should be litigated because it does. There is a legal question here. Although I side with the community, I think that it should be looked at by a court. I also feel that there is some, although it appears since Matt himself is not aware of this issue, it was an administrative decision. And so I'm not saying that it was a political decision, but I would advise that when people allow themselves to be disabused of their prerogatives for so long, that state lends itself to abuse, further abuse. And I think that's what's going on here. I mean, the county board basically knows that it's going to get reelected by a lopsided majority every single year. A big signal is sent out far and wide that this is going to happen. And so they say, they basically say we really can do anything we want. Now, it is true that other local jurisdictions also have Democratic boards that with lopsided majorities, Fairfax County being one of them. But the difference is that Fairfax County has district-based representation. And the guy who's sitting on the hot seat in the equivalent of Lyon Park knows that if he charges, a fee for waste or whatever, he just might get unseated in the next Democratic primary. That doesn't happen here. Also, elections there are 4 years. Here, they're every year.
Thank you. I did promise one more person a question, that you could ask a question. Is it for all the candidates, though? Okay, wonderful. Come on up. And this will be our last question for our county board candidates.
Thank you. My name is Roz Sloan. I live in Barcroft. And if you read Arlington Now, if you read the Sun Gazette, I don't follow a police scanner, but the amount of crime in this community is on its way up by a large margin. What are you planning on doing about this? And we've also lost a lot of policemen.
Thank you. I'll let you take that one first.
Well, I love that question because I support the police, and I absolutely oppose defunding the police as a policy whose primary effects are visited on people of color. Yes, I do believe that Arlington has not suffered as much as other counties because we don't have a very large black population. We have a sizable but not huge Latino population. So we don't suffer the same invidious effects as other cities. For example, my hometown of Philadelphia, there was a feature story in the newspaper that the cemetery in southwest Philadelphia is filled with uncovered graves because the bodies, these are all young people, by the way, are coming in. They cannot bury them in time, okay? That is how bad the killings are in central cities across the United States. And I absolutely oppose the defund the police movement. I think it's thoroughly misguided. I think its primary victims are people of color, and I will do all in my power to put a stop to it. Also, I absolutely opposed the removal of school resource officers from the schools. I think that was 2 years ago. I think that is also, that falls into the same category, and I oppose it. And I would also argue that the whole Black Lives Matter movement is, in my opinion, governed by guilt-ridden whites who recruit people of color to their cause without providing them with an adequate basis for doing what they propose to do. Okay, thank you.
All right. Public safety is literally the top of my concern list. I have some campaign cards at the tables back here. Feel free to pick one up and take a look at what the very first bullet is. It is prioritizing public safety. Here in Arlington, we're in an interesting, I think, very kind of privileged place because violent crimes, the crimes that result in injuries and death, down, historical lows even. I think 2020, 2019, 2021, zero fatalities, murders. And I think that's still the case so far this year. However, we have a rapidly increasing, sharply increasing property crime. That is the issue that we need to deal with here in Arlington County. Now, it isn't done by more patrol officers, uniformed police going around. We think that's the case. So we think that if we just throw more money into it, hire more people, that solves the problem. It doesn't, not with property crimes. What helps are investigators, detectives. That's the side of law enforcement that we need to invest in and make sure that we have funded to make sure that we have those detectives, those investigators that can go around following up on those property crimes. Right now, you file a police report for a property crime, car catalytic converter theft or a bike theft or some sort of vandalism or damage. What happens? It goes in the garbage bin, never to be seen again, right? That is where the investigators, the detectives come in to follow up and pursue those cases to the end. Another thing that touches on public safety, which is a very broad term, mental health and substance abuse treatment. We are still, despite our efforts, very far behind on our treatments for mental health and substance abuse. And that is where you can have the biggest impact, your biggest bang for the buck on fighting property crimes. And thank you very much.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Sloan. I think you said Ross. I have a friend who was mugged in his 20s, and his life experience changed. I have not been mugged, but those who have, it changes your life. So it's not just individual, it's so personal. So it's a big concern. We are on, Theo's right on the violent crimes. As a community, we're less than many other communities of 240,000. But that doesn't mean we have the crime-fighting resources all focused in the right ways. First, on police. This budget that started July 1st, we did a 13% raise for police, not just because we need to value police, but in part because we had lost 35 police officers so quickly over the last 6 months that preceded it. We're in a tough market, DC, federal police, public safety. It was the right thing to do to make that investment because community policing does matter, and we need the overall resources for the various different types of police officers that are necessary. In Barcroft, we have to invest in your neighborhood. Coming up on Saturday, Tyrrell Hill Park, which is just up the way a little bit, we haven't always served our historically larger percentage communities of color as well as we need to. And so that is why I supported a police oversight board. Not because we have an abusive force problem, but we need that trust from every community. So that's a couple of steps. Our chief, I think, is being thoughtful, and he is focusing on the sort of 21st century policing that we need. We do need to invest in mental health and substance abuse. One of the hardest things that we have is a challenge with getting the staff people to do that work. And so those are all factors that I think can help us with crime.
Thanks, sorry for the wire. We're going to do something a little bit different because Randy has raised another question. I'm going to go ahead and ask it, but we're going to give a 1-minute answer. Last month, the Planning Commission heard some. I'm sorry? Last week, thank you. The Planning Commission heard a proposal, considered a proposal in courthouse. The staff position was 12 stories. The Planning Commission voted for 16 stories. In addition, after that vote was taken and later in the meeting, the Planning Commission actually took a vote to suggest upzoning all along the Ballston-Roslyn corridor, looking at 16 stories for basically every property there. Do you support that kind of redoing the GLUP, the General Land Use Plan, to allow for 16 stories everywhere along the Roslyn-Ballston corridor? If so, why do you support it? If not, why don't you? I'm going to start with you, Ms. Clement.
Okay, well, I live in Westover, just a mile or so away from Ballston, and I absolutely oppose that, but I think there's more going on here than meets the eye. I think the Planning Commission has run amok. I mean, these people are not sane or reasonable, and any developer who would take their advice needs to have his head examined, because we have a 20% office vacancy rate. We also have an 8% residential vacancy rate. So, in other words, Ballston can't rent out either the offices or the apartments, particularly the luxury apartments that it has built. So, under these circumstances, further densifying Ballston is just crazy. It makes no economic sense whatsoever. And whenever decisions that are so inconsistent with reality are made by sober-minded adults, I think there's something wrong with it. I think they have some other motive. I think they have an ulterior motive.
Hi. I'm Adam Theo. I'm Vice President of Ballston Virginia Square Civic Association. Yes, densify Ballston. It's right by a metro station. That's the perfect place to densify and have 16 stories for every building. All along the Roslyn-Ballston corridor is exactly where you should have that development. It's nonsensical to say that if you're within a 5-minute walk of a metro station that you have a surface parking lot that's just filled up by food trucks. That's absurd. Come on now. The Roslyn-Ballston corridor is a prime opportunity to have that high 16-story, 20-story, whatever level of development. And I think that we need to break away from this idea of sector plans and GLUPs for little parcels and things like that. Take the entire stretch, treat it as one neighborhood, look at it comprehensively from Roslyn all the way to Ballston, and allow for that transit, the floodwater mitigation, parks, schools, and everything else as one stretch. Thank you.
Thank you, Theo. Yes, I support redoing the GLUP. This is an area where I align with Arlingtonians for Sustainable Future, and you can see it, they asked a question. Our theory has been bullseye targeting of density. That is what we decided when we made the decision in 1970 or 65 that was so controversial to underground the metro. It was very close vote, and what it resulted in was so much wealth for our community. Arlington schools were better funded for 40 years, in part because transit-oriented development. The details matter. The question was also about this. The building is in Clarendon, more closer to courthouse, and I have not made a final decision. I don't believe in densification for its own sake. I do believe that the corridors are a place for densification, and that is part of why I oppose 8 plexes in missing middle. We need a nuanced strategy on all these issues.
Thank you. Now we'd like to move on to the candidate's final 2-minute statement.
The choice in this year's county board race is clear. Re-elect an incumbent who is going along the county's missing middle agenda, which is intended to recoup real estate tax revenue lost to a 20% office vacancy rate. or elect a longtime community activist who has pledged to hold the line against it. Matthew Ferranti is a good foot soldier, a leader he is not, having voted with the majority on virtually all legislation considered by the board since his election in 2019. This year, Matthew Ferranti rubber-stamped a tax package that increased the effective residential real estate tax by 5.3%, even when other local jurisdictions like Fairfax County cut taxes in response to related real estate assessments. Now Matt is in a quandary. Although he wants to go along to get along with his colleagues on the board, he's getting static from Arlington residents who don't want to be gentrified out of the county in the name of missing middle. If elected to county board, I won't claim credit for rubber stamping done deals. I won't push harmful housing policies that threaten Arlington's quality of life. I will promote the preservation of historic buildings and reverse the county's policy of permitting their wanton destruction. I will preserve the Potomac watershed by refusing to permit the clear cutting of precious wooded areas beside its tributaries as the county is presently doing. If you are dissatisfied with the direction of county board, now is your opportunity. Vote Clement, independent, for county board on November the 8th, because county board needs more than a rubber stamp.
So by now, you probably know that I am a very forthright, honest, even kind of blunt person. I fight for what I believe in. I believe in missing middle housing. I also believe in election reform with ranked choice voting and expanding the board opportunity, or the board that we have, so that more people can get on the board and have their voices heard, be represented. My style is of kind of a bluntness. I'm a policy wonk. I like to sit down with people and go through the gritty, ugly details. Please reach out to me. I would love to meet up for coffee, lunch, even if it ends up being half the day, I will do so. One thing I am not, I don't rely on fear and anger. I rely on optimism and making sure that we can all get along, even if we strongly, fiercely disagree on things. That's something that I have a problem with Audrey, is she relies, if you notice, a lot on fear and anger. She whips it up and turns it and politicizes it for political power. I'm not that way. That's a very ugly thing for Arlington County. We just suffered through 4 years of that on the national level. I won't have it here in our community. With Matt, he's very much the status quo. He wants to preserve everything as it is, unless, of course, it's a pay raise for himself. Yes, he voted for $20,000 for himself and his other county board members. He's also very much against ranked choice voting. He'll say that, oh, he wants to study it, wants to test it, try it out in the primaries, but he's come out, recorded, saying that he is against ranked choice voting because he's afraid it will result in a non-Democrat being elected. No matter how partisan you are, how much of a Democrat you are, that should scare you, right? That's an overtly partisan thing for an official, an elected official, to be doing, to say, and want to do. I will not be either of those. It's hope, optimism, opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. I always love being in this building and engaging with both your civic associations. 4 years ago, about 2 streets over and 4 blocks back, I was invited into one of your neighbors' homes for a conversation. I can't remember every part of it, but I can tell you that we talked for at least 20 minutes while the rain came. She has said at the end, "I'll think about voting for you." That seems like the level of granularity that I know from Lyon Park and Ashton Heights. You want to know our souls. You want to know our ideas. You want to know our hearts. I can tell you, I felt so lucky to earn the election 4 years ago, and I got 2 standing ovations from my competitor. That is a reflection of who I am. I'm civil, I'm committed to equity, and my priorities align with Ashton Heights and Lyon Village. On our environment, work on climate change, an inclusive economy, I have labor support. Affordable housing, I've invested. Barcroft. The leadership I've demonstrated as chair included passing the Civilian Oversight Board, plenty of controversy about that, passing an immigration trust policy, continuing the inclusivity on immigration that we desperately have and need to maintain in Arlington. And last, when I was chair during the midst of the pandemic, my wife can tell you I didn't sleep because your health was so important to me in getting out vaccines. Ask her, she's in the back. I share the ideas I believe you cherish. I listen, I engage. I'm ready to do the work on day one, and I'd be honored to earn the opportunity to continue to serve you. I respectfully and humbly ask for your vote.
Thank you. I think we put the park in Lyon Village, I guess. All right. It happens a lot, actually. Let me ask everyone to give a round of applause to all of our county board candidates. And thank you so much.